Hey, welcome to Tennis Takeaways with Lisa and Dewey. I am Dewey Evans, and I am here with my partner in crime, as always, Lisa Stone. And we're talking about the business of the day as it concerns junior tennis, college tennis, and a little bit about pro tennis. There is a lot going on in the
Gorgeous day, I'm sure. So,
I know you had to
great.
wake up early to kind of catch up with what's going on. They're broadcasting out from the East Coast early today.
Yeah, I thought about us on the West Coast. USTA hosted a press conference basically about the US Open. It started at 10 a.m. Eastern, which was obviously 7 a.m. for me out here in California. But I wanted to tune in and kind of get the scoop on what's happening with the US Open. We know that earlier this week, the USTA announced that the US Open is happening. It is happening in its normal date range, the end of August through the second week of September. And we also know that the Cincinnati tournament is being moved to New York to take place the week before the US Open. And the idea, I guess, is since there's not going to be qualies for the US Open, but there will be qualies for the Cincinnati tournament, it's going to maybe open up the opportunity for more players to play and participate and earn some money and earn some ranking points and all those things that professional tennis players are concerned about. It's also giving the USTA an opportunity to broadcast the US Open. I had to jump off the call, so I'm not sure what the TV situation is with the Cincinnati event, if that's going to be broadcast as well. I assume yes. I assume that's why they moved it to New York so that the TV stations and broadcasters could all just have to come to one place and be able to stay for a few weeks. But this is all necessary for USTA to get the TV revenues that they need in order to boost their budget and make sure that they can pay for all the things over the next year. So those who follow USTA understand that USTA's budget is mostly padded with US Open revenue. That's
Yeah,
the
it's
crux
the
of
cash
it.
cow,
And
right? It is
it
the
is.
thing
And
that
so
feeds the entire beast.
exactly. So USTA had to do whatever it could to make sure the US Open happened. And they are working with the NCAA's medical director, who was also a big tennis guy, Dr. Brian Hainline. He was actually part of the press conference this morning. And producer Kim, I don't know if you want to throw the graphic up, but I was able to do a screenshot during the call this morning. That's me, my little Zoom icon up in the top right. But these are the guiding principles that went into the decision making to actually hold the US Open. So first and foremost, USTA says, they want to make sure they can ensure the health and safety and mitigate risk of anybody contracting and becoming ill with COVID-19. They wanted to make sure that the decision benefits tennis and that their plan was financially viable. So newly appointed US Open tournament director Stacey Allister was a big part of the call this morning. Katrina Adams, the immediate past president, was on the call. Chris Widmeyer, who heads up the media for USTA, was on the call. And as I mentioned, Dr. Brian Hainline was there as well. There was a little surprise appearance by video from Serena Williams saying how excited she was to come back to New York and play. So it'll be interesting. I had to jump off the call, as I said, to get ready for this, but I will be getting a transcript later this afternoon. So I'll be interested to go through and read all the questions. But some of the questions that I was hearing before I jumped off the call were really interesting. One of the things USTA is doing for the players is they are creating these little bubbles near the airports. So players will have access to two hotel rooms that will only be for them and their people, but they'll only be allowed to come on site with one person, whether that's their coach, their physio, a family member, whoever they choose to bring with them on site each day. They're going to be tested multiple times. There are all these precautions in place. So again, it'll be interesting to hear. We know, professional tennis players, a lot of them are young adults. They are single. They typically, one of the things we see during the US Open is video of the players clubbing at night or, enjoying the city of New York. And so there were questions around that and how that's going to be managed. So there's still a lot of details, I think, to work out. But, I guess, is it good for
And it's going
tennis
to be
that the US
fluid.
Open is happening?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then it's going to be fluid because we don't know where things are headed at the moment, anyways, right? So there's
right.
always going to be questions of has this next peak, next wave, next whatever it is, or
Right.
continuation of this one moved in a certain place? Is New York City the safest place in the world because they did so much, because they were the epicenter worldwide, right? The place where there
Yeah.
was the most crud. And so did they take mitigation to a level where it is now probably the safest place or one of the safer places to be.
Right.
Question of will players face quarantine if they leave the United States, because the United States is one of the places that is most out of control at this point in time. Still more new cases than anywhere else happening on a daily basis. So does that impact what they have to do after they leave?
Right.
And what does that look like if there's not really any media other than who's broadcasting it? What does it look like with these great big cavernous stadiums with nobody in them? We're both in the media world, and so we think about things like audio. And what does it sound
Yeah.
like, when there's no people in the stands, and so now there's a big echo chamber and the ball's bouncing. So does that have an entirely different vibe to it than what it was? I hear that there will be ball kids. Are the ball kids handling towels? Right. That's been my bugaboo since before
Oh,
this thing
I
ever
mean, it's
came. Like
disgusting.
my kid's not
Yeah.
handling somebody else's nasty towel. That's just,
Yeah.
those that, back in the days when Agassi used to blow snot rockets all over the court, and then he'd be wiping his nut. Like, I'm sorry, my kid's not touching
Yeah.
that towel.
Mm-mm.
So I guess we'll see. But
Yeah.
sports opening back up. The governor of New York kind of signed off on it, said this is
Yep.
going to happen. And so we're going to see sports again,
It's a
hopefully.
big rah rah. It's what we do in the U.S., right? We rah rah. That's what
Right.
we like to do. So
And
this
so
is a rah rah. There's a
on another
junior
note,
rah rah too.
that's a couple of weeks after national junior play
National
in the
hockey.
US
Yeah.
gets started again, right? So there's also an announcement
Exactly.
from the USTA about the boys and girls national hard courts, or I
Hard
guess an
courts.
announcement about all of the age groups, but specifically about what's going to be played, where it's going to be played, and how that's going to work. What do we know on that one?
So the 16s and 18s for both the boys and girls are going to be played. The 12s and 14s have been canceled for 2020. And what's interesting is traditionally the boys 16s and 18s have both been held in Kalamazoo at Kalamazoo College. But for 2020, only the 18s will be in Kalamazoo. The boys 16s have been moved down to Mobile, Alabama, to the Mobile Tennis Center, which anybody who's been there knows it's a beautiful place. It's hot as all get out in July. So sorry for those of you with 16-year-olds who are choosing to go to Mobile in this summer, but it is a very well-run center. They have tons of courts. So I think, probably the decision behind that was there'll be plenty of opportunity for social distancing and keeping everybody safe. The girls traditionally have the 16s and 18s have both been held down in San Diego. And for this year, only the 18 girls will be down there. The 16s will be in Rome, Georgia at the brand new, huge tennis facility up there. Also, very hot and humid in July. And because it's a newer facility, there aren't a lot of mature trees surrounding the facility yet. So there's not a whole lot of shade in Rome, Georgia for the tournament. So that's going to be a little tricky too. But what we know about the tournaments in terms of how they're going to be structured, so the player plus one will be allowed on site every day. So one parent or one coach or whoever. So player plus one is all that will be allowed on site. The draws are smaller, and the selection process is much as it has been in the past. However, the ranking lists have not been updated on the tournament entry pages, or at least they hadn't been updated as of yesterday when entries opened. And so that will be curious to kind of watch and see if which ranking lists are going to be used for selection. There's still that whole quota thing with the sections. X number of players from each section will be granted entry, but the first point of entry is the national selection list. So the one that was on the tournament entry pages when I looked was from October of 2019. So we know USTA has frozen rankings. It'll be interesting. We don't have a clear picture on how that's going to work.
Yeah, I mean, I guess two questions immediately come to mind, and I come at it from the coaching side, or probably more than anything else, and in a program which is very much focused on using tennis to be able to leverage college selection. And college
Right.
coaches aren't going to be allowed on site. And so
Correct.
what's the purpose of holding these events, just these events? The other question which comes to mind is, isn't there some gigantic facility down in Florida that the USTA just
I
spent
had that question.
millions and millions of dollars on to be able to host major? Well, that was part of the spiel, right? That it would be able to, it was the home of US tennis. And yet we assigned things to different facilities, and it was not one of those facilities. So what's the deal there? Is the fix in where they throwing money at specific people that were insiders? And I don't know. The conspiracy theorist in me is creeping to
Yeah.
the surface.
Believe me, I had those thoughts as well. And I think it is very bizarre that, rather than bring the 16s to Lake Nona, they chose to put them in Mobile and in Rome. Um, I find it very odd, but I was not part of that decision making process. But one thing I do want to say, and I was telling you this before we went on air today, when I heard that these tournaments were happening, my husband and I were talking about it, and he was saying, if Morgan were still playing, would you take him to the tournament?
Mm.
And I said, I'd like to think that I would make the decision based on risk, right? And looking at the risk of hopping on a plane, staying in a hotel, having to eat in restaurants and all of that. And I'm hoping my decision would be no, it wouldn't be worth that risk. Sadly, I don't have 100% confidence that I was that logical and thoughtful when my kid was in the midst of junior tennis,
Right,
because
right.
we
Other
all
people are
get
going to
caught
play. My
up.
kid's not going to play. He's not going to have a chance. He's not going to make it. He's not. He's not. We're not. And so we
Right.
must. Right. And
Yeah,
therefore, we must.
exactly. Right. And I suspect a lot of families are going to struggle with that decision of what to do. The replacement for clay courts is happening this weekend in West Virginia. We talked about that last week, and so we'll
Okay. So here's my
see.
question that you might know because I don't know. Are Barnes Tennis Center and Kalamazoo College, do they have play site on all the courts? Are these matches going to be accessible to the college coaches through that vehicle, as opposed to, I think all the courts down at Lake Nona
In Lake
all
Nona.
do have
Yeah.
play site, right? So if
Yeah.
the 18s are being left at places that don't have it, and therefore the matches aren't accessible to the college coaches, are there other things being done so that the college coaches can see, or is that a question that's even come up as far as you know?
Yeah, it has come up. And interestingly, so you say the 18s, but really a lot of the coaches were going to Kalamazoo and San Diego watching the 16s, right? They were going to plan ahead for future recruiting classes. Not, a lot of them already have their recruiting class for this fall, and a lot of them already have the players in the pipeline for a year from now. So the 16s is even more of a question, in my opinion. And to my knowledge, Mobile may have a court or two, but I don't think they have all their courts. And I have no idea about Rome. I've only been to that facility once. I know Barnes does. Barnes and Kalamazoo both televise their finals, maybe their semifinals last year got televised too. I can't recall. So there is capability. I know the Tennis Channel comes in for the finals for the 18s, and in fact, I think the 16s finals were televised at Barnes last year too. I was there, and I seem to remember that happening. Sorry, my old brain
Yeah,
just doesn't hold
I
on to
hear
that
you.
kind of data. But to my knowledge, no, not every court has the ability to stream. So this is a point of conversation. USTA has said that it is working to make recruiting possible remotely for the coaches because, first of all, still in a dead period for recruiting in July. So NCAA doesn't allow the coaches to be there physically. Secondly, a lot of the universities and colleges have slashed their recruiting budgets. So even if we weren't in a dead period, there's no money for the coach to travel to the tournament. So they've got to have some sort of virtual way to watch these matches. I
Mm-hmm.
suspect, if there's a kid who is really interested in a certain school, then maybe their plus one at the event is going to Facebook Live or Instagram Live or something, their matches, so that the coaches can watch that way. Maybe they'll reach out and say, hey, I'm playing at this time. Here's where, my parent's going to be streaming my match.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect there will be some creativity that way. But to date, we don't have concrete information on that. So
Lot to take
lots
in. It
going on.
changes. It changes moment by moment by moment, and
Yeah.
we come close to exhausting our 20 minutes just talking about that. And we didn't even
No.
touch on what our plan for the day was. Um, we are still very much looking to talk to people who are who are involved in created work at have some affiliation with inclusive programs, not so much looking to talk to people who have the programs which are, I'm going to call you out, what I call the do-gooder programs, the people that are run by a bunch of white folks for at-risk minority kids in minority neighborhoods that are very much, look like, they don't look like everybody is welcome. They look like it's a program for a bunch of black kids run by white people. And sometimes there are a lot of black instructors. And our goal had been to have a guest on. We do have a guest tentatively in line for next week. We were going to
Yeah.
spend,
Hopefully.
hopefully, we were going to spend today talking about how do you create those kinds of programs? What was my experience in creating both the minority majority program and other things that I've been involved in? And how do you get to a place where you are inclusive without it being an affirmative action type of deal, where you're specifically having to ask certain people and you're forcing it? So how does it happen organically? And that's a discussion that I think we can still have. I don't know if we should spend a little more time today, Lisa, to do it, or if we push it back, or how you want to handle it. I know we're at our 20-minute mark here in the next minute. What you
Well,
think?
I think it's important that we put the call out again because I have had people reach out to me and say, "Oh, I want to come on. My program fits exactly what you're talking about." And then after digging a little bit and not even very deep, just asking a couple basic questions, it it turns out there are a lot of programs like the one you just described, Dewey, where it's somebody coming into a neighborhood that's considered at risk with children who are considered at risk and starting a tennis program, maybe in combination with an after school academic program, maybe in combination with music instruction and art instruction and all these things, which let me just say, we're not saying those are bad, but
Hmm.
completely the opposite. Like, thank goodness for people who are bringing tennis to places where tennis may not be a sport that kids see. But what we specifically are looking at in this time that we're in right now where the Black Lives Matter movement is on a, just a downhill, trajectory. I mean, well, uphill trajectory, whatever. It's
Has
taking off.
momentum. It has
It has
momentum,
there, thank
yes.
you. It has momentum and getting so much attention. What what we're trying to do is find the programs out there that have figured out how to bring all colors of players together on the court in the program together, and that it's not about seeking out, well, we got to have this many brown kids and this many black kids and this many Asian kids and this many Indian kids. No, we want to hear about programs where this has just kind of happened, and what needed to happen prior to those kids showing up on court to attract them to the program and keep them in the program. And I know that sounds like a lot, but in order to really facilitate change, we can't keep separating people into these different groups and expect them to gain understanding of one another and feel comfortable with one another unless we provide those opportunities. And tennis is such a great vehicle for that. And Dewey, you've had success doing that in the past. But as you said, you didn't seek to do that with your program. It just kind of organically evolved, right?
I knew for a long time that tennis was a vehicle which I used to help people have some other experiences that they'd be able to use later on. Pretty early in the process, so, early 1990s or so, I came to the conclusion that one of the benefits I could have or I could help facilitate would be people having an experience with people who came from a neighborhood, is how I thought of it at the time, because I was in Boston, Massachusetts, and the neighborhoods were very segregated. They were very ethnic, actually. So even there was an Irish neighborhood and an Italian neighborhood. So, South Boston and the East End and all of those things, as well as black neighborhoods. And so the goal was to do things where people from another community could have an interaction at a place where they would then think of those people from somewhere else as humans, that they would have had a previous experience and they could look and say when they met someone, wow, I had a doubles partner who was fill in the blank, and they were really funny, or they were just so serious. I wonder if this person's really serious. But, to create some curiosity and a starting place that wasn't from ground zero. So some level of understanding and having humanized that other group of people. And so that was always one of my goals. It was never, we spent our time talking about the US Open and talking about college recruiting, and that was never my big deal. To me, that was a byproduct. That was something that happens when you put kids in an environment and they're all chasing excellence together. At the end of that, those that end up the closest to the sharp end of the spear at that point in time, those are the ones that turn pro. The next level down, they play at the Georges, the Stanfords, the whoever happens to be the hot program at the time. And then, those further down, maybe just leveraging their college choice. And so they're going to a Division III school, and it's a separation between them and all of the other kids whose parents can afford it and great test scores and all of those other things, and on down the road. And some of them just having had the experience, and now they're playing club tennis, or maybe they're not playing at all, and they come back to the game at some point as an adult when they want to start having exercise and think that, wow, tennis was fun, I can come back to it. So there was a wide range of great outcomes that I felt like were possible, and it was done best where it was inclusive of everyone, where the people just looked different. And that has looked different in different programs I've had. When I left Atlanta and went to Charlotte, North Carolina, and when Midcourt Tennis Academy was started, It was like that, but it was almost like they were unplanned ethnic days. So it was almost like there was a black day, there was an Asian day, there was an Indian day. And so if you came to the program, because if you signed up for the program, you were allowed to come any day you wanted. There was no you're signing up for Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday. It was you just signed up for the program and you could come. And there were some days when it just looked like all the kids were not, parents were Nigerian, or all of the kids' parents came from a specific Chinese school. If you know anything about the Chinese community, a lot of the kids go to Chinese school. Well, one of the things that happened in that program was somebody who was the principal of the Chinese school put their child, or her, she was the principal, but put her child in our program as one of the first kids in the program, and lo and behold, that she got treated just like anybody else. And so now, as a community, the word spread that here's a place that we can go, and we're not treated any differently than anybody else. We are just people there. We are seen as individuals, as humans. And so word spread. And that Chinese school, I guess one of their other activities was, their weeknight activities was, we're going to tennis at Park Road Park. And Midcourt Tennis Academy. And so it happened organically. And it just happened because I viewed people as just people. And so when I came to Dallas and I started a program, I think a lot of people who initially came were those who had seen me at national level tournaments with kids that I had coached. And lo and behold, who were the kids that I coached? Well, they were Asian kids, they were black kids, they were white kids, so they had seen me with all of these different people. And so they had been attracted to me. So who came to me were people that knew me from that, and that also felt like it was okay to be in that environment. I was probably non-threatening to them to a degree because I grew up in a place where I was accustomed to being the only black person in the room. So when everybody in the room looked like something other than me, I wasn't standoffish.
Right.
I was just me.
You were comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, and so
And
that
so,
undoubtedly made people comfortable.
right. And so I think we want to put the call out again. If you have a program that looks like that, please reach out to us. If you have a program that doesn't look like that, but you would like it to, and you would like to have a conversation on air about what you can do to make everybody feel comfortable in your program, we want to talk to you too. So again, reach out to us. You can reach me, Lisa, at parentingaces.com. You can reach Dewey Evans at gmail.com, right?
Gmail.com works, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Or you can comment wherever you're watching this today, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook or wherever you're watching. If you just put, your information, say you're interested, we'll reach out to you and we'll make the connection. But we really want to keep this conversation going because both Dewey and I feel very strongly about the fact that, tennis is changing right now in this world we live in with the pandemic and everything else going on. And we have a real opportunity to impact our communities in a very positive way. We have an opportunity, we keep seeing tennis is the safest thing you can do during the pandemic, other than locking yourself in your house, which has been my action of choice.
I said
But
that at the beginning of the pandemic, that somebody
right.
needs to figure out how to market tennis as the safest place to be.
Right. And we continue seeing that come out in the news, right? Tennis is the lowest risk activity. So if that's the case, let's use that information to grow our sport. Also, we are in the midst of civil unrest in this country, and tennis is the perfect vehicle to show people of all different backgrounds that you can be together in a tennis program on a tennis court and learn about one another while competing in a healthy environment. I mean, there are just so many positives to what we can do as a sport. And in my opinion, what we're obligated to be doing as a sport right now. And so, again, if you're interested in learning how to make your program a little more what you called it, colorful, I think, Dewey. You were
Maybe
talking about,
yeah.
yeah.
If you want to do it and you're not wanting to talk about diversity and inclusion. Like, I'm sorry, and I'm glad the USTA has a diversity and inclusion person, as do most of the sections and a committee, but like that doesn't get the job done. Those are band-aids. Those are little things that they're putting out to make pretend that they're making a difference. You can make the difference by doing something in your program that just makes it available, that just says you're welcome here with us, that this can be your program too, not you're allowed into our program, but come and be part of our program, and we will embrace you, we will celebrate you, and we will learn to understand you. We're scared of things that we don't know about, right? That we're scared as
Sure.
little kids of the thing that's making the noise under our bed, that's in our closet. And what do the parents do? They come in and they open the closet and they turn the light on and they put a light on it and see, here's what you were scared of. Or you were scared of the branch that was scraping against the window. It's not somebody trying to get in. Shine lights on things, talk about them, and we will all be less scared of each other.
I think we
That's all.
should end with that. I think that's the message of the week. Shine the light. Let's do it.
Talk to you next week.
All right. See ya.